Welcome to Convince Me, presented by Bet365. We are kicking off the Power Hour here at Action Network, the only NFL pregame show with all the stuff you care about, none of the fluff you don't. I am Chad Millman. I am joined by my Action Network buddies, Sean Koerner, Simon Hunter, Chris Raybon. They will try to convince me what player props, sides, and totals I should be betting today. Plus, we got Darren Rovell and Evan Abrams on the Action Network news desk. Later in the show, bottom half of the hour, we got Gilles Gallant, Brian Matthews, Charlie DiSturco. They will be taking us through the touchdown show. But first, I want to remind everybody, do you want a chance to win big money, a free chance? Don't forget to enter the Favorites Podcast $100,000 Pro Football Pick'em contest. We're giving away boatloads of cash for a free-to-play Pick'em contest. We got a season-long contest. You can win up to 40 grand for first place. We're paying out the top 10. You can win up to 3 grand in the weekly contest. We are giving out 3 grand in prizes. You can win 1,500. Misspoke there. Go to favorites.actionnetwork.com to sign up. Keep playing all season long. Also, if you are watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like the video app, download it today. Also, don't forget when you download the app, BetSync, your Bet365 bets with the Action app. It's the coolest, slickest way to track your picks with ease and speed. Click the My Accounts button in the My Action tab in the Action app. All right, folks, let's get to it. Sean Koerner, kick us off. Give me your player props.
What's up? Well, I'm going to go with something gross here because I'm going to ask you to fade one of the best running backs of all time. And I am going with Derrick Henry under 2.5 receptions. Now, like I said, Derrick Henry is one of the best running backs of all time. However, he typically does most of his damage on the ground and is rarely used in the passing game. So that's why we're fading his receptions prop. And, you know, his usage isn't going to change much this year, especially considering the Titans spent a 3rd-round pick on rookie Tajay Spears, who's a solid pass-catching back, and he actually played more snaps than Derrick Henry in week 1. In fact, he ran twice as many routes as Henry last week, and Henry wasn't even in on 3rd downs or the 2-minute offense, which are the 2 key, situations to be in for running back to get targets. And even when Henry does run his dozen or so routes today, he's going to be pretty far down the pecking order in terms of targets. DeAndre Hopkins is still going to command a ton of targets. And we're going to see Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo more involved going forward. Both saw a target share lower than 8% in week 1. That's not going to, last. So I'm projecting Henry closer to 2 receptions. But in a market like this, half reception is massive. So I'm actually showing a 65% chance he's held below 2.5 here, so I love this prop.
What is the price at 2.5 right now?
It's only minus 125. So
minus 125?
And I would, minus 125, and I would take this down to like minus 155. Again, his most likely outcome is 2 catches. Exactly. So
exactly right. And you talked about like there's a 65% chance this doesn't happen. So the pricing is incredibly off right now. So there is a decent amount of ceiling in the juice. All right, Derrick Henry, under 2.5 receptions. It's not as like you played it up. It was going to be so gross, like it was Raybon gross, but it was like a counter gross because it was Derrick Henry, right, but it's doing something Derrick Henry doesn't do anyways. All right, Simon Hunter, what do you got?
Yeah, this one's gonna be tried. I'm gonna try to convince you something I know you don't want to do, which is fading this Bears team. But it's a player, and it's Herbert, the number 1 running back for this Bears team. I just don't like this spot for this Bears run game. They're going up against a Bucs team that is really good against the run. That's their strength on defense. And their weakness is being passed on. I think that's what this Bears team is going to do in this Buccaneers game. And the fact that it's up now, you can get it at 50-49. That's a big deal to me. So the public is going to overreact to this because they have a running back out now for the Bears. I still think they're getting a great number here. And just a matchup that he's not the guy. Like if we're going to talk really about their lead running back, it's Fields. They still want Fields carrying the ball the most. Both these guys had 9 carries last week. So like that's just their offense where they want both these guys running the ball. So looking at this matchup, I think he'll get a lot of catches out of the backfield. I just don't see Herbert running the ball much in this game. And the fact that that's where the strength of this Bucs team is, I love that. So we saw it last week with that Minnesota team. They couldn't get anything going. I think Madison averaged 3.5 yards per carry, and it was just never there. But in the air, it was easy for Kirk. Kirk was thrown over the field. I see the same result here, especially in a Bears team that they want Fields to throw the ball. Like we heard all week that this offense needs to get right. And that's them talking, getting right. They want to see DJ Moore getting more than 2 touches in a game. Like it's going to be a passing game for this Bears team. So the fact that his total's so high, it feels like people are betting off last year's number where there's a lot of people to feed in that backfield for the Chicago team. So I like Herbert's under rushing yards.
Yeah, look, the Bears didn't come into this season with a number 1 running back, and Deontay Foreman is going to be out today. You mentioned that. So the number's gone up a little bit on Herbert. I agree with you. I like the fact the number's gone up because I still think it's an underplay. Justin Fields had 56 yards rushing last week. I also agree with you. This Bucs defense, you can throw over the top of this Bucs defense, right? Kirk Cousins in week 1, 33 of 44 passing. The only reason they lost that game against the Bucs is because Kirk had multiple turnovers, but this Bucs defense was letting up a lot of passing yards. I like the way you're thinking about the game plan, Simon. All right, Raybon. This is what disgusting is. So go ahead, share what you got.
Hey, I'm going with the only over of the 3. I'm going with Tank Dell over 24.5 receiving yards. This is the time of year when I love to bet on talented rookies, and this is the perfect spot for Dell. Noah Brown actually led the Houston Texans wide receivers in routes last week, and he is now on the injured reserve. So Tank Dell cleared this last week. He had 34 yards on 3 catches and 4 targets. He also got 2 more targets, but they were nullified due to penalty. So I think this is a great spot for him. His routes should jump from under 50% last week to, in the 60s, maybe even in the 70s, because he's going from the number 4 to the number 3, which is a big jump. So love me some Tank Dell. In the preseason, he showed out 9 targets on just 22 routes in the preseason with 5 catches, 65 yards, and a crazy touchdown. So love Tank Dell over 24.5. I would bet this up to 29.5. I think he's a good bet to catch 3 balls today.
I listen, don't try to play it off like it's not disgusting because it's an over. Like we're all just some squares who are so excited to bet an over. That is truly disgusting, Raybon. I can't trust anything about Tank Dell or the team that he's on right now when it comes to the passing game. I got to say, guys, this one is actually pretty easy for me, and maybe it's a bias, but I'm definitely going under Khalil Herbert in his rushing yards today. That one is actually easier than I expected it to be. Raybon and Koerner tried to play with my emotions. They tried to sort of, deflect and deter and say they were going gross, but not gross. I'm no fool. Give me Khalil Herbert under in his rushing total today for the Bears. All right. The sides are trickier, guys. Sides are a lot trickier. Koerner, what do you got?
So I'm going with Pats plus 2.5, although if you can buy up and get the 3. But the Pats were the unluckiest team in week 1, according to our luck rankings, which is, a big reason why this ranks the 3rd biggest luck gap for week 1. So love the Pats here based on the luck rankings. The Pats lost to the Eagles despite outgaining them by more than 130 yards. They had 7 more first downs. They had 3 drives end in Eagles territory. 2 of those actually reached the red zone. So should have had a much more higher scoring output. And the Pats offense should be a lot better this year under an actual competent offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien. And they have a much easier matchup this week against the Dolphins, who ranked 31st in DVOA last week. And I'm not sure you can actually slow down the Dolphins offense or Tyreek Hill right now. But I would guess Bill Belichick might have the best shot at coming up with the way. They actually held the Dolphins to 21 points or fewer in both matchups last year. Granted, only one of those, Tua was under center. But I was projecting this closer to Dolphins -1. So I do like the Pats plus 2.5. But like I said, if you can buy it up and get the +3, you can get it at like -124. And like I would, hate to have the Pats lose by 3 here. So I would highly recommend, grabbing that extra half point and getting the +3 here.
Yeah, this has been a much talked about game this week, and we're going to dig into it a little bit later in the show. huge pros Joes game here with the pros on one side and the Joes on the other. That's a little bit of a tease for our Sunday Night Football segment later in the show. Simon, what do you got?
Chad, I wrote 2 articles this week for Action Network, and both games Sean and Chris picked. So we're all locked in here, boys. So you really can't go wrong here, Chad. I love all 3 of our games. I'm going with the Jaguars. I think this is the most exciting game of the day, and to me, it's the only number that's really held. All these numbers have moved. Like, I really love the Patriots at 3, but then it was 2.5, and it's just tough where that's how this week has been, right? Like a lot of these good numbers, we love Tennessee at 3. Now it's 2.5. So it is tough to take these numbers when they move, but the Jaguars have stayed at 3.5 in a lot of books. So that's a number that I want people to take and shop around. And it's the simple fact of I see the Chiefs winning. Me and you love them at 3 and 2.5, but the back door is going to be open in this game. And if you go back and you watch the tape last week, Trevor Lawrence looks like he's taking that step, Chad. I mean, Calvin Ridley, that was the game changer he needed. He needed a top 10 receiver to be paired with him to really take that to the next level. And it looks that way, Chad. So when I'm looking at this matchup, I really wanted to take the Chiefs. And then you started getting all these trends. Doug Peterson in his career as a coach, 10-0 against the spread as a home dog. Last season, this Jaguars team were 5-0 against the spread as a dog at home and 5-0 straight up. So it's just a team that they get up. When people start doubting this Jaguars team, that seems to be the time to get on them. We don't really like them as a favorite, right, Chad? We always joke. We don't take the Jaguars as a favorite, especially on the road. But as a home dog, especially last year, they were good to us. So I'm going to keep riding that trend of I back Mahomes when he's under a field goal. That's his sweet spot. But whenever it's over a field goal, this Chiefs team just tends to let teams into these games. So I'll take the 3.5. It's either 3.5 or 3, despite all the money, all the teasers, everything, Chad, coming in on this Chiefs team. So a very telling line this week, taking the Jaguars at 3.5.
Simon, listen, I feel like you're trolling me and doing this to make me sick to my stomach because, when I woke up this morning, all excited for the day, checking the lines, first thing, like a professional bettor, I saw at a book the Chiefs move to -3, and I nabbed the Chiefs -3 right away. And now all of a sudden I got you, my BFF, telling me I got to take the Jags at +3.5. And it's making me a little squeamish. What if I have the Chiefs at -3? Do you feel like I've made a bad pick?
No, because you're on Mahomes at a good number. But I just think the better number is a 3.5 in the sense that that's what's going to cover. You don't play for pushes here, Chad. So that's why I'm trying to get people to take the 3.5. Don't take the 3 with the Chiefs.
All right. Taking the 3.5 with the Jags. Raybon, talk to me.
So this is going to be disgusting because I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks +4.5 at the Detroit Lions. And this is a classic week 2 spot where the Seahawks looked terrible in the second half last week. They're without both of their tackles. Meanwhile, the Lions upset the Chiefs in week 1. But I think that this spread should be a lot closer because when you look at Seattle, they still have weapons. Their tackles were okay. Like, it's not like they were some all-pro tackles. They were 2 second-year tackles. And the real issue last week wasn't the tackle situation. It was the fact that Aaron Donald just destroyed their interior line. So Detroit doesn't have anybody like that that's going to, just create that kind of havoc and have Geno Smith, yelling all types of profanity. So I think Seattle can hang with Detroit here. This kind of reminds me of a similar spot last year where the hype was building around Detroit and they were favored by more than a field goal at home against Seattle, and Seattle proceeded to roll up 48 points and win the game in Detroit. So we see week 2 underdogs when they're +6 or less coming off a loss in week 1, 66% against the spread since 2005. You have week 2 road teams that lost by double digits in week 1. They're 38, 21, and 1, 63% since 2005. So this is a time when, you kind of look at these two teams and everyone loves Detroit and Seattle looks disgusting. But I love Seattle here. And by the way, they also have a luck differential of 24 and a luck gap of over 100%. So that has been a very profitable spot historically as well. So love me some Seattle here at +4.5.
Yeah, look, this is gross in a way that I can get behind. I mean, we're talking about a great spot for Seattle. If week 2 is the ultimate overreaction week, then you're not going to get more of an overreaction than betting against the Lions team that just beat the Chiefs on the road, the Super Bowl champs going home to a sold-out crowd against a Seahawks team that were favored at home and lost in an ugly way to a Rams team now going on the road. Of course, we're going to bet the Seahawks. I bet the Seahawks at +5.5. I still like it at 4.5. I think it's one of the better plays on the board. It's moved the least. Simon has talked about a lot of these numbers moving, and a lot of these numbers have moved over key numbers, especially when it comes to the big underdogs that we normally like. This one has moved from 5.5 to 4.5. It's basically moved across a dead number. So I think you're still getting a little bit of value here at the 4.5. Chris Raybon, I'm backing your gross pick. Give me Seattle +4.5 on the road against the Lions. All right. Convince Me is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. See for yourself when you sign up today with code ACTION, and you'll get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. Must be 21 or over. Must be present in Colorado, Iowa, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. All right, as promised, at the Action Network News Desk, we have Darren Rovell with the latest news and info from the markets, plus Evan Abrams with some cool trends, nuggets, and trivia. Darren, take it away, buddy.
All right, Chad, we have the most bet teams today. Number one, the Dolphins, 2.5 versus the Patriots. They are tied for the Packers with the best ATS percentage since 2019. That was surprising to me. Number two, the Chiefs, 3.5-point favorites against the Jags. And number three, the Lions, everyone's darling, 4.5-point favorites against Seattle. Jared Goff, 10-1 against the spread in week 1 and 2 in his career. The best against the spread of any quarterback in the last 20 years. Most profitable quarterback against the spread in the last 5 years overall. Thanks, Ev, for all these stats. But God, this seems so easy. Lion is so easy. Most bet overs: Dolphins, Patriots, 46.5. The Seahawks, Lions, 47. And then we always like the Chiefs, the Publix, the Squares, my people, 51.5. That has continually gone up, and people still like it. Now let's get to the most bet unders. Week 1 was the best to my heart's delight. The best opening week for unders since 2006, according to Bet Labs. Unders are 23-9 in week 1 over the past 2 seasons. Now, the juiciest under, despite it coming down like 10 points, of course, because of Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson. Can Zach Wilson actually do anything? Can Breece Hall run more than 40 yards? I don't know, but the Cowboys might be able to score 38 alone. That number is 38.5 from like 48, 49. Ravens, Bengals, 45.5, and the Commanders, Broncos, 38.5. And now the best player props, the most bet player props. Bijan Robinson over 2.5 receptions in what seems to be a Chris Raybon special. Cortland Sutton under 49.5 receiving yards, and Christian Kirk over 42.5 receiving yards.
Darren, you know what's interesting? Before we get to Evan, where you're clearly trying to steal Evan's job by laying down all the nuggets, the Jared Goff nuggets that he loves to share, but whatever. What's interesting is all the games you mentioned, that Patriots-Dolphins game, that Lions game, the luck rankings for Action and the professional bettors, they love Seattle. They love the Patriots. There are going to be some very good Pro Joe games going on today. Evan, can you share anything that Darren didn't try to steal from you?
Yeah,
I credited him, Chad.
I was apoplectic over here. But let's continue with low totals, because that's kind of where Darren was starting. So one total was below 40 in week 1. We have 6 totals below 40 in week 2. So those 7 combined games with a total below 40 is the most we've had since 2 weeks, since 2011. So we haven't seen these types of totals in a long time. And here's one fun nugget about low totals. So in games this season where the line drops, the total drops between the opening and closing line, unders are 12-3. And since 2021, 189, 142, and 1. So 57% if you just follow the market in terms of unders, which is interesting. The second thing I want to talk about, a little bit of overreaction. And this is kind of what we do between week 1 and week 2. So teams off a double-digit loss in week 1, facing a team not off a double-digit loss, 32, 16, and 2 against the spread since 2014. When those teams are on the road, 19, 2, and 1. That's the Giants, Bears, and Seahawks. So that's a little bit of a fun nugget for all the overreaction people out here. And this is a nugget just for Chad Millman. Now, this is not going to start the morning off well, but I figured I'd go with it. And our producer, Gifford Gould, loved it. Over the last 20 years, which quarterback has the lowest straight up win percentage as an underdog? Minimum 20 starts. That has to be Justin Fields, who is 3-19 straight up as an underdog at 13%. Sorry, Chad, I love you. Now,
let me just say, I expected this from Gifford. I didn't expect it from you, Evan.
He's the one that moved it up in the rundown. So I'm going to give it to him on that. But let's get with the trivia, and we're going to give you some choices here. So last 20 years, give me the most profitable quarterback to the over. Okay, here are your options. He's also the most profitable quarterback to the over the last 3 years. So 3 years and 20 years. Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins.
Darren, would you like to take the first shot?
Darren?
I'm going to say, Josh Allen's a trick. I'm going to say Kirk Cousins.
Okay, Chad?
Oh my God, I want to go with Kirk Cousins. So now I got to go with Geno Smith.
Okay, well, you're both right. It's Kirk Cousins. Your first instinct's always right,
Yes!
Chad. Kirk Cousins is the answer, and obviously, Thursday Night Football.
It's what I get for being polite. Darren Rovell, Evan Abrams, thank you so much for joining us from the Action Network News desk. Sean Koerner, kick us off.
All right. Well, I'm going with the Chiefs Jaguars under 50.5. And, while this game certainly warrants, being the highest total of the week, I do think that there is some value on the under here. The Chiefs getting back Chris Jones here is massive for the defense. Last year, teams averaged 1.5 fewer yards per attempt when he was on the field. And, he generated the 3rd highest pressure rate of all interior linemen. So just his return is massive for the defense. Plus, he's going up against a Jags offensive line that's dealing with a couple injuries on the interior. They've been struggling. So, I think he's going to make a difference in today's game. And, the Chiefs are also getting back Travis Kelce, but he's coming back from an injury. So there's a chance he's not, 100% recovered from his knee injury yet. So, he could be a little bit limited today. And last week, the Chiefs wide receiver group, ton of new pieces there. They just didn't have really good chemistry with Mahomes. I think it's going to take them at least a couple games to really, click with him. And Adrian Hill is reffing today's game. And I know you were probably asleep by the second half of last week's Sunday night game, but he made a couple huge holding calls for us to have the under still hit. So love taking the under on his games. Like I said, they're 30-17 to the under since 2020. And there's an actual reason for that. His crew tends to call offensive holding at a higher rate than other crews, and the Chiefs routinely finish in the top 10 every year in holding calls, mainly because, Mahomes moves around the pocket so much. It's really it's tougher for offensive linemen to maintain their blocking assignment, and sometimes they get grabby. Plus, it's better to, just get a 10-yard penalty than have the defense take a cheap shot on Mahomes. So I think we're going to see a higher, rate of holding calls in this game. And I'm projecting it closer to about 48.5, 49. I grabbed this when it was 51.5, but I still think we're having some value here at 50.5.
Listen, Koerner, don't think that you can get away with a side swipe of my sleeping habits just by giving me a little bit of ref total porn in your rundown here. There's a lot that goes on in my house after 9:30 at night. I don't want to know what's happening. I got a teenager in the house. I don't know when he comes home. The sooner I'm asleep at night, better off everything is for me. All right, Simon, what do you got?
I'm going the Green Bay Atlanta under. I love this total. It's a game that the general public just watches box scores and highlights. Like they'll watch last week and say, well, Atlanta put up a decent amount of points. Green Bay put up a ton of points, right? Look how good Jordan Love looked. It's a totally different week than it was last week for both these teams. Like both defenses on these teams seem like they're the identity of the teams, right? And when you're looking at the offensive side for Green Bay, the fact that Watson's out, their number one receiver, and then Aaron Jones is out, that's a big deal to me. That's a big deal. They're two speedsters. They're two guys that can push the ball downfield, and Watson and the running back that anytime Jones takes a screen pass, you think he's going to take it the distance. So the fact they're both out, we've seen this total go from 42 now down to 40. I still think you're getting a good number. And both identities of these teams is run first. Like Jordan Love, you weren't convinced last week, right? I watched him against the Bears. It didn't really seem like he was even doing that much. It just really fell into their lap. It was great game planning by LaFleur. This Atlanta defense is sneaky good. Like they have a really strong front and middle of the field that, that's kind of where their bread and butter is. So looking at this matchup, I do think that the fact that, say what you want about Ritter, he won't turn the ball over is actually a good big deal towards this under. Like they're just one of these teams that they're going to grind it out, try to give him 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4 plays where they're just running the ball the first 2 downs, and then he'll have short completions on 3rd downs. And we talk all the time, that's how you drain the clock in football. Like these teams that like to run it, really drag it out, those are clock draining teams. So the fact that both these teams want to run the ball first, they have both teams have inexperienced quarterbacks. It's just great that it stayed above 40. So the fact you can still get it at 40, I think this is a automatic play on this under.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said about Jordan Love. I mean, the Bears handed him that game. They had multiple turnovers. They had multiple sacks. They gave him short fields. They were basically a high school defensive backfield. And this week, Aaron Jones out, Christian Watson out. You're going to be playing against A.J. Terrell, who's one of the better defensive backs in the NFL. That's a really interesting take on this game, Simon. I don't want to give away my lean right now. Raybon, what do you got?
I'm going Cowboys-Jets under 38.5. I think this is going to be a very conservative game plan from both sides. The Jets, because obviously you lose Aaron Rodgers. You're going against this Dallas defense that just destroyed the Giants O-line with pressure last week. So you don't want that to happen to Wilson. You can't afford to get Wilson hurt because then you got Tim Boyle or Randall Cobb as your other quarterback. So I think the Jets are going to run the ball a lot, but the Jets only got 13 yards before contact on 28 carries. So if Breece Hall doesn't pop that big 80+ yard run, their run game may struggle, and you can't count on a guy popping a big run like that every week. So I think the Jets offense will struggle. And then this Cowboy offense, without Brandon Cooks, their number 2 receiver, and without guard Tyler Smith as well. So Dak Prescott's been talking all offseason about not throwing as many interceptions. So I don't think they're going to be very aggressive either, especially knowing they're going up against Zach Wilson on the other side. So I think you get two teams that just kind of conservative going against two of the best defense, maybe the top 2 defenses in the league. And the under is 7-0 in the last 7 Zach Wilson starts. And 10 of the last 13 Jet games dating back to last season have finished with a total of 38 or below. So give me Jets, Cowboys under 38.5.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I think all 3 of these are great. The Chiefs are a sneaky pick also because remember that Lions offense, everyone thinks it's supposed to be amazing. They only scored 14 points against the Chiefs in the opening game. 7 of their 21 points came from a pick 6 from the Chiefs. So gosh, this is a tough one. This is a hard one. I think I'm going with Raybon and the Jets and the Cowboys. I think that the combination of the Jets needing to be conservative because they really don't think Zach Wilson can do anything. I mean, even when he did get them into the end zone last week, it was a prayer that Garrett Wilson did everything he could to make sure he caught that pass. And I do think the Cowboys get more conservative because they don't have to be brilliant offensively, and the Jets defense is so good. All right, so give me Raybon and the Jets and the Cowboys under. Let's go to Sunday night. Right now, the New England Patriots are 2.5-point underdogs in this game. The line has moved from 3. It opened at 3. This is, like I said, guys, this is a pros Joes game. The Joes are all over the Dolphins. 56% of the bets are on the Dolphins. The pros love New England. It's why it has moved. It's called a reverse line move. 65% of the money is coming in on New England right now. The total is 46.5. I get to choose who goes first in this one. And you know what? One thing that always bothers me about this show, I've said it a million times, Raybon has the advantage because he's always the anchor. And so, I'm not immune to recency bias. So I'm going to make Raybon go first. A little bit of an advantage because he gets to pick his favorite pick, but I'm having Raybon go first here. And then Simon, and then Koerner.
All right. I am going to go with the under for this game. I look at this New England defense, and Sean mentioned it. They held the Miami Dolphins to 21 or fewer points in both matchups. The Tua game, Tua had, just 20 points. The Dolphins won that game, but it wasn't a big blow up spot for Tua. And I look at the two matchups here. It's Bill Belichick on one defense and Vic Fangio on the other defense. So I think those are two of the best minds in the NFL. Fangio is influencing pretty much every defense. Every defensive coordinator nowadays runs that same Fangio scheme that gets hired. So I like this under. New England's offensive line banged up. Four of their offensive linemen are listed on the injury report. 2 did not practice all week. So I think New England is probably going to have to keep the ball on the ground, keep away from Tua. And on the other side, I just think Miami is not going to do the same thing they did against the Chargers, who every time we see this Charger defense, they're giving up, 24 points in the second half in that playoff game, then another 36. So this is a totally different defense in New England. And week 2 divisional unders that opened at 43 or above are 44 and 22, 67% over the last 2 decades. So I think, these divisional games are always tight. Give me the under.
I do like the under in this game. Simon.
Chad, I love the Patriots. That number's gone. The 3 is gone. So I'm going to go with Stevenson. Anytime touchdown, running back with the Patriots. We saw this Miami team last week against the run. Like that's not what they want, right? They're a team that just can't stop the run. And, they've thought that things would come in and maybe correct that issue. I just don't think they have the players. And on the flip side, the Patriots team, they can run the ball. And even against the Eagles defense that is really good against the run, they still had some success in that game running the ball. So looking at this matchup for Stevenson, this is a dream scenario for this Patriots team. They're getting a team that likes to play and, perfect conditions, right? That's what that was last week for them in Miami, playing in that Charger Stadium. And now they're outdoors in the elements against this run attack that even with their offensive line missing, they're still a team that wants to run the ball like that. Bill O'Brien talked all year. That's what's going to set up the pass for Mac. So the fact that Stevenson, to me, is a top 10 running back, and we know that Miami can be run on, plus 110, plus 120, whatever you can get at anytime touchdown, that's just a really good number to me for Stevenson. And just playing the odds here that if they're in the red zone, he will be getting the touches. Everyone thought it was going to be Zeke. But last week we saw they went to Stevenson when they got down there. So I like the value here on Stevenson, Chad.
I like that. I wonder if they'll talk about Stevenson in the touchdown show in the bottom half of the hour. All right, Koerner, I have no idea where you're going with this. You already talked about the Pats plus 2.5 to as your favorite side. Give me your next favorite pick then.
So I'm going with a prop here. I'm going Juju Smith-Schuster, his longest reception to be under 16.5 yards. You get it at minus 125. But week 1, Juju only managed to post a 4-catch, 33-yard game. Despite Mac Jones dropping back to pass 58 times, Juju only ran route on half of his dropbacks. And he was actually nowhere to be found, like towards the end when they mounted their near comeback. He wasn't in the game. I think that's a huge red flag for his playing time going forward. I think his offseason knee surgery, he hasn't 100% recovered from that yet. Plus, we could see Devontae Parker return tonight, which could, eat in his playing time somewhat. And he only saw an 8 out of 4.3 last week. So it's going to be tough for him to clear 16.5 yards when they're really only underneath threat from the wide receiver group. So I'm projecting this closer to a 65% chance of staying under 16 and a half.
A dot, average depth of target for those who are, new watchers of our show. All right. So I got the under 46 and a half. I got Stevenson anytime touchdown plus 110. I got Juju under 16 and a half for his longest reception. I got to go with the under. I like the way this one is shaping up. I like everything Raybon just said about the total in this game. And Koerner, I'm not gonna lie to you, like these one-off player props where like you're so beholden to one or two missed tackles. We saw a little bit last week with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, right? We loved his under total prop, his under total yardage prop for receptions, and he had two plays where he just broke a couple of tackles, and all of a sudden he's got 50 total receiving yards. These make me a little bit nervous, so I'm going with the Patriots under. My four picks that I chose, I went with Khalil Herbert under his rushing yards for the Bears. I went with the Seahawks plus 4.5. I went with the Jets and the Cowboys under, and I went with the Patriots and the Dolphins under. Convince Me is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. See for yourself when you sign up today with code ACTION, and you'll get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. You must be 21 and over, must be present in Colorado, Iowa, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, Virginia, or 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. Terms and conditions apply. Download the Action Network app. Follow all of our picks. Stay tuned for the touchdown show. Good luck today, everybody.
Thank you, Chad, and the whole Convince Me crew, and welcome to week 2 of season 2 of the Touchdown Show on the Action Network, presented by Bet365. I'm Gilles Gallant. I'm joined every week by Charlie DeSturco and Brian Matthews, a.k.a. the BMAC. Guys, you both got one last week. Charlie got an early with Calvin Ridley, and Brian nailed J.K. Dobbins, who goes on to get hurt one drive later, tears his Achilles, but that doesn't matter because we scored. Now mine, unfortunately, they fell short, but I do love the board today. Lots of value. So here's how it's going to work. If you haven't watched the show before, we're each going to have 3 anytime touchdown picks. Some will be a little mild or maybe on the chalky side, and some, they're just going to be outright spicy. Charlie, why don't you tell the people what else we got going on today?
Are previewing Sunday Night Football. We got the Dolphins heading into Foxborough against the Patriots. We'll break down our favorite picks from that game as well. And yeah, we got BMAT's tiers that is also on the Action Network website. My same game parlay also there in case you're wondering about other stuff to read and take in.
And Brian, you're probably going to have more picks than just what we have on the show. If we wanted to find more of your picks, where would we go?
So if you go over to the Action Network, you'll be able to find all my picks in the touchdown tiers. Sure, I'll give out a few here, but on the touchdown tiers, you'll find about 10 to 20 guys that maybe I have highlighted in those first 2 tiers. So I definitely go over there and check it out.
Beautiful. We'll talk about your tiers here in a few minutes, but I wanted to remind everybody, make sure to stick around till the end of the show, because after we give out our picks, we're going to reveal a special anytime touchdown boosted parlay from Bet365, and there's no gimmicks. It's just some boosted odds on some good players. And the Touchdown Show is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. See for yourself when you sign up today with code ACTION, and you'll get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. 21 plus only. You must be present in Colorado, Iowa, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, or Virginia. And if you're in Iowa, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. Terms and conditions apply. All right, I want to get started, guys. And these are the mild bets. These are the ones where we're going to try to go after guys who are maybe a little bit lower in the odds, anywhere between plus 100 and plus 200. And I'll get us started. I'll be looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver Mike Evans at plus 175. Now, he scored last week, and he should have had 2 touchdowns. And Brian, Baker Mayfield was the Cleveland Browns quarterback. I know you're a Browns fan. You have to agree that this is probably the best wide receiver he's ever played with in his career. And they're facing a Bears defense that gave up 2 goal line touchdowns to Romeo Doubs last week. I think we could all agree that Mike Evans is a big step up compared to Romeo Doubs, especially when one of those was a beautiful goal line fade on Tyreek Stevenson. That is Evans' specialty. And this is a great price, too, on Mike Evans, because last week against the Vikings, he closed at plus 155 for an anytime touchdown. And I tracked the anytime touchdown odds last year. Mike Evans topped out at plus 170, and that was in week 17. And that was against the Carolina Panthers. He went on to score 3 touchdowns in that game. So I think we're getting pretty good value here on Mike Evans at plus 175 for an anytime touchdown. Charlie, I like a top end wide receiver. I think you do as well.
Yeah, I'm heading out to Las Vegas and Buffalo, and I'm targeting Davante Adams here. He's number 1 in Vegas, and if you look at week 1, everything kind of points in the right direction for Adams. Once again, a dominant target share, about 35%, and he made up over half the air yards total for the Raiders. And I think that this one is key because he's playing Buffalo. They're large underdogs here. So what's going to happen? They're going to be forcing Jimmy Garoppolo into a negative game script. And that means there's going to be more passes for Davante Adams. The Bills, they run zone at above a 50% rate. So Adams is able to kind of pick where he has his matchups and dominate in that middle of the field and in the zone. He's one of the better wide receivers against that. And I think the key here, no Jacoby Myers. He left last game late on a late hit by the Broncos. He's out with a concussion. He had 10 targets in week 1. So I think that there's going to be a lot of targets to be had for Adams. He's a big play threat. I know we've talked about him in our group chat before, but I mean, if you look at this receiver room, DeAndre Carter, Christian Wilkerson, Austin Hooper, Michael Mayer, there's not that many people that are going to be able to steal targets from this guy. And at plus 155, I love the value we're getting at Adams to get one.
This is a great price, Brian, at Charlie at plus 155. And one of the reasons why I think we're going to be loving Davante Adams as well today is over the last 3 years, he has the most touchdowns by a wide receiver in the NFL. He had 43. Next one behind him was Tyreek Hill with 32. So this guy's a touchdown machine. I love it in this spot. Brian, let's look at the Lions and Seahawks game, because we were talking about this off air. We were trying to determine, do we like this guy on the Lions side? Do we like this guy on the Seahawks side? What did you settle with?
All right. So look, I guess when it comes down to it, I had to go back to last year. And one of my most successful anytime touchdown bets was Kenneth Walker III.
Yep.
So look, there are a lot of good candidates in this game, right? I think this got the potential for a lot of points, but I was kind of waiting to see how that timeshare would work between Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. You look at it, 12 carries for Walker, 3 carries for Charbonnet. So I even saw some involvement in the passing game. So look, I think Kenneth Walker, I don't love that both offensive tackles aren't playing this weekend. I will say that. But look, it's a fairly soft matchup for them. Seattle loves to run the ball. I get the feeling they're going to try to come out and establish Kenneth Walker early and often. And at plus 135, I think he gets enough volume to make those odds look great. So, look, love the matchup. I'm going back with Kenneth Walker III to score an anytime touchdown at plus 135.
Yeah, great value at 135 to get a running back 1 at that price, especially considering near the latter part of the year when he took over as RB1, he was routinely seeing odds around minus 110, maybe even up to minus 120, depending on the matchup. Where did you have Kenneth Walker this week, Brian, in your touchdown tiers? Would he have been in tier 1?
Yeah, so actually I did have Kenneth Walker toward the bottom of tier 1. Again, I just look at the matchup. I think they are going to try to establish the run. Pete Carroll has always done that. They like their backs. And if you look at Walker, he's an explosive back, right? It just takes, a missed tackle, and him to get going for him to just really hit one. He's also the guy at the goal line. He's a powerful back. So I just think the situations will present themselves for Walker to score a touchdown today. Look, I don't know. You ever get the feeling in your stomach, right? And you say like, all right, I'm going with this guy. And that was kind of the overwhelming deciding factor. It's just like, hey, I got a gut feeling Kenneth Walker III is getting in the end zone today. So I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, don't argue with your gut, and don't argue with Brian's touchdown tiers. You could find those published on the Action Network, and you could see how he's ranking the anytime touchdown scores for week 2. All right, let's kick it up a notch. We're going to look at a little bit more of a medium style here. If we're using the wing analogy, we're going to be looking at just ones that are a little bit more hotter here. And Charlie, why don't you get us started here? What are you looking at for your second best bet for touchdown show?
Yeah, this is following, B-Matt mentioned he had a gut feeling about this one. This is my gut feeling out of the Giants camp. I love Darren Waller at plus 240 here. This is the perfect bounce back spot for him. He's off the injury report. And if you read anything about that injury, it's not really a nagging hamstring injury, more tightness around the area. So without a designation, I think he's going to play the entire game. And it's easy to look at how he did as a whole. And you look at, Waller only ran in week 1, 52% of the dropbacks and had a 22% target rate per route run. But then you look into the numbers, right? We watched that Sunday night game. We talked about it on the show last week. They were demolished. The Cowboys just steamrolled the Giants. The Giants didn't even score. And so Darren Waller didn't play much of that second half, which is why those numbers are skewed. You look, he had in the first half, he was running around on 87% of the dropbacks from Daniel Jones, and he had a 42% target share. So we talked, and we watched the preseason. Him and Jones had some kind of chemistry and was getting used a ton. Well, it's going to happen here in week 2, I think. Arizona, they're atrocious against the tight ends. Last season, 3rd most receiving yards and the most receiving touchdowns to the position. And now you factor in there's no Isaiah Simmons. Josh Woods is out, who's a linebacker, and Budda Baker is questionable. There's a lot of opening in the middle of the field, and Waller has a great opportunity here. Arizona last week against Commanders gave up 5 for 60 to the tight end position. So give me Waller plus 240.
Shocked when you were able to get these odds because he was plus 200 last week against Dallas, and that was obviously less than an ideal matchup. Now you're getting a way more ideal matchup. And I think the only reason we're seeing odds skewed maybe a little bit higher is if they're thinking of a game script where the Giants just run out with a big lead. But we saw in week 1, they played the Commanders pretty tough. And I think they're going to do that again this week as well, which lends well to Darren Waller getting a touchdown. Now, Brian, you cashed in on J.K. Dobbins, was looking at the Ravens running game last week. Are we going back to that again this week?
Yeah, look, it's hard to avoid the Ravens running game, but now at this point when J.K. Dobbins is hurt, there are 3 backs there. So, I get that there might be some uncertainty, but I think that's why we're getting a lot of value on this next pick. I love Gus Edwards, anytime touchdown at plus 220. Look, his nickname is the Gus Bus, right? Like, if you want somebody to score a touchdown, I like a guy named Gus Bus, to move the pile and get in the end zone. I just think last week it might be an overreaction to Justice Hill, scoring 2 touchdowns. If you look at his stat line, I think it was, 8 carries, 9 yards, 2 touchdowns. And if you look at the 2 players, Edwards to me profiles better as the goal line back. I do think he gets more work. I understand Melvin Gordon was called up. And if he has a huge game and a lot of involvement, then I'll gladly have egg on my face at that point. But I just think Gus Edwards this week, I think the books are saying, hey, look, Justice Hill scored twice last week. He's probably going to be the guy again. I love that plus 220 number. And if they get close to the goal line, I think Gus Edwards punches one in.
Yeah, another one, Brian, that I'm shocked that we could get odds over plus 200 because running backs routinely in this offense are anywhere between the range of plus 110 to plus 140. So the fact that we're getting Gus, who I think we've seen just a track record of history that he is a pretty explosive back when he needs to be. And Justice Hill, I think you put it best when you said kind of buying the dip here, especially because it doesn't look like Lamar is really comfortable yet at the goal line situations. He had a couple spots there against the Texans last week and didn't really want to take advantage. So I think Gus Edwards is a solid look here. I'm going to move over to arguably the game of the day between the Chiefs and the Jaguars. And speaking of buying the dip, I'm going to buy the dip on a squeaky wheel here. And I'm going to be looking at Christian Kirk at plus 215. Now, I know Calvin Ridley is the flavor of the week, and he may well score. But part of the reason why you want to look at Christian Kirk here is because the Chiefs play a lot of man coverage. And this is where Kirk thrives. When they were playing against the Colts last week, they were playing mostly zone. That's not really good for a slot receiver like Christian Kirk. And then you look at the defense that the Chiefs, how they fared in week 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown, when he scored, he actually lined up in the slot and went up over the middle against the Chiefs. And that's where Kirk lines up exclusively, is in the slot. And also, the track record is there. In 2 games versus the Chiefs last year, regular season and playoffs, 16 catches, 150 yards, and 3 touchdowns. It's undeniable. And he's coming off a dud in week 1. So like I said, look for him to get the squeaky wheel treatment in week 2. Guys, let's look at Sunday Night Football. Sunday Night Football, we've got Dolphins, Patriots. It could be a shootout. I think a lot of people, I've seen sharp sides on the over. I've seen sharps on the under as well. And right now we're seeing a total at 46.5. Let's look at the top 5 guys for anytime touchdown odds in this game. Now, Tyreek Hill coming in at plus 105, Raheem Mostert at plus 110, Ramondre Stevenson at plus 120, Jalen Waddle at plus 150, and Ezekiel Elliott at plus 175. Now, you'll see a number under there. It's called Fair Odds. Our friend of the show, Dr. Nick Giffen, was able to go through the projections, and he determined what the actual fair odds should be for each player. So he has plus 120 for Tyreek, he has plus 145 for Mostert, plus 150 for Ramondre, plus 190 for Waddle, and plus 235 for Ezekiel Elliott. Now, based on those odds that are coming from Bet365 and what we have for projected odds from Nick, I wanted to ask you two guys, who do you like in this game to score a touchdown? Because I love Jalen Waddle, but obviously the odds discrepancy here are maybe a little. Talk me off of Waddle here. Who else would you want to take in this game to score a touchdown?
I'll let Matt handle it.
All right, so here I'll jump in on this one, right? So I do like Jalen Waddle, right? I like him a lot, but I look at the defense that New England runs, and it's predominantly man coverage. And if you look at man coverage, Tyreek Hill's target share, is absolutely insane. Like, it is almost 60%. So the reason why there's not a man on earth that can cover Tyreek Hill in man coverage, it's just a mismatch from the get-go. I get that the odds aren't very good, but I do, I think Tyreek Hill, gets another one. The guy did have 3 targets inside the 10-yard line. So I don't think they rely on their running game as heavy as possible. Tyreek getting fed down there is also a great indication that the short passing game is almost an extension of the run right now.
Yeah, I'm not.
Charlie,
go
for it.
I'm not looking to fade Tyreek Hill that much here. I kind of like Ramondre Stevenson on the other side. I know that Matt hopped on Action Island. Those are his 2 picks, Hill and Ramondre. Right. I love Ramondre Stevenson this game. The Chargers gashed the Dolphins run game for over 200 yards, a pair of touchdowns. I think Ramondre Stevenson has a bounce back game. He played the Eagles D-line, which we saw against Minnesota in week 2 on Thursday Night Football, also shut down Alexander Mattison. This is a great spot. Ramondre is the better back than Ezekiel Elliott. He outsnapped him basically 2-1. So, and obviously the odds are not, as great, and it's juiced on Sunday Night Football all the time. I think if you want a Patriot, I think the Patriots are going to try and ground and pound, and Ramondre is an explosive and powerful back.
I think Ramondre is definitely somebody you want to look at. Mike Gesicki is going to play, but I think the guy that we probably want to look at, just because you're still getting odds around plus 220, I think it has to be Hunter Henry or Mike Gesicki if you're looking for a revenge game angle.
Right?
Because
that's what I was. Yeah.
The tight end aspect, I think we have to really look at that, because last year the Dolphins allowed the 3rd most touchdowns to tight ends with 10 last year, 3rd most catches, and they allowed a touchdown to a tight end in week 1 to Donald Parham. So not necessarily tight end 1, but I think there are looks over the middle, like Mac Jones as well. We have seen right now, Hunter Henry has led this team in red zone targets in each of the last 2 seasons. If Mac Jones gets to the end zone and he starts throwing it, it's likely Henry is going to get at least 1 look. So from a probability standpoint, I do think Hunter Henry is probably the guy that I would want on the Patriots side. But if the game script lends to ground and pound, Ramondre over Zeke all day, every day. Guys, go.
Real quick, I was talking to Dr. Nick yesterday, and he also said, for what it's worth, and I'll leave it with this, the highest on the board per his projections, Raybon's and Koerner's as well. Durham Smythe, Miami Dolphins tight end. Yes. So do with that what you will.
Noted.
All right, Durham Smythe. I did not think that he'd be getting a mention today on the show, but here we go. All right, let's kick it up a notch, boys. Let's start looking at our spicy bets. These are the ones where we're going to go maybe a little bit outside the box. We're going to try to get some odds that are maybe a little bit over plus 300 or somewhere, something that is just a little more long shot range here. Brian, why don't you kick us off here?
All right, look, I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'm going to go to a guy that I played last week. Didn't translate to much on the field, but the numbers behind it are what encourages me. So, look, I like Jake Ferguson, anytime touchdown at plus 360. If you go back through the numbers last week, you say, all right, the guy didn't do much. But if you actually dig in, nobody had more targets inside the 10-yard line. Nobody had more targets inside the 20-yard line. So as far as involvement, I'm looking at 5 targets in the red zone in a single game. So I love that. And it was also a game where they really didn't need to play competitively all 4 quarters. So I really look at that and say, okay, this could be the week. We talk about buying a dip. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but look, I like picking players off a down game. You know, normally it's a receiver, right? AJ Brown next week, keep note. But you know, Jake Ferguson, I like him today. Look, the Jets, you look at the matchup, right? You get scared off initially, but if you actually go back to game one, Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid each had 4 catches, you know, about 80 something yards combined. So I'm not scared of the matchup. I think when they get down tight, you know, Pollard, sure, he's getting a lot of opportunities, but man, it's tough to argue 3 targets inside the 10-yard line. So I'm going to go Jake Ferguson, anytime touchdown at plus 360.
I love the pick. I mean, obviously I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'm biased, but at the same time, part of the reason why you like Ferguson here is because of just snap counts, but not only that, snap counts in the red zone, not only just the targets in the red zone, but you're not seeing Peyton Hendershot as much out there. Exactly. Although I will mention that Peyton did get a look that he dropped a dime from Dak. Beautiful. And he's around like 12-1. So just going forward with what you were saying about Dak loves to throw to the tight ends, this is a good spot here for Ferguson. So I would be getting on that as soon as possible. I'm going to go little bird brain, galaxy brain spicy here. And we're going to go start looking at defensive and special teams touchdown, boys. We're going to be looking at the 4 p.m. slate. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a half unit and we're going to put 0.25 unit on one, 0.25 unit on another. And we're going to be looking at the Broncos defense taking on the Commanders and the Jets defense and special teams playing the Cowboys. So here's why we're doing this. So we got 2 strong defenses facing what I would consider suspect offenses, like Sam Howell for the Commanders. He gets a little too much love for what he actually is. He only has 2 starts in his career. He may as well be a rookie. He's got 2 interceptions and 2 starts, playing on the road in a hostile environment, in the altitude, in Denver. Just a strong chance of him making a costly mistake here. And as for the Jets, I think this is the only way that they have a chance to cover or win the game. They got to create turnovers. They got to get points out of nothing, especially because Zach Wilson has just looked like a complete dud at a quarterback. And I ask you guys this, like, this is kind of a rhetorical question, but at the same time, it's true. Like, would it shock you to see Dak Prescott throw an early interception in his own territory and then the Jets run it back and they're up 7-0 early? I didn't think so. Like, that's very likely to happen. So this is the best bang for my buck. I think what we have to do, we're taking the Broncos defense and special teams, and we're taking the Jets defense and special teams. Broncos defense and special teams is coming out to 7-1, while the Jets are coming out to 11-1. Charlie, why don't you take us home here? This is the final pick of the show. What do you like?
Yeah, as a resident Jet fan, I would say targeting the defense or Zach Wilson, who'll be running for his life, probably the smart move there, because this offense I'm not too high on. But my spicy pick here, I'm gonna follow BMAT's strategy of taking a tight end in the 300s, and I'm going with Luke Musgrave at plus 330.
Nice.
Listen, I was thinking about taking him last week, and he nearly scored twice. He was overthrown by Love and would have had a walk-in touchdown once, and then he was underthrown and fell on his butt when he could have probably walked it in early in the 4th quarter on the other time. So this is a guy that has an extremely high ADOT. He has an 18 ADOT, so he's getting downfield. He's a big threat for Love, and they had a connection early in preseason. I think it's going to continue here, and I think the key here, no Aaron Jones or Christian Watson. Both of them threats. Watson, a big play threat, and Aaron Jones is the do-it-all running back who had multiple touchdowns in week 1 and is the workhorse. And now there needs to be production elsewhere. And I'm not too high on AJ Dillon. I don't know if he's really the type to really break through there unless it's maybe on the 1 or 2 yard line. So I trust this matchup and I trust Jordan Love to get it done. Atlanta, for what it's worth, they gave up 5 receptions, 41 yards at a touchdown to Hayden Hurst last week, who is the number 2 tight end. Best on Carolina production wise, and the second best obviously of all tight ends. So with Troy Anderson out and then linebacker is weak and a weakness of Atlanta, I think that Musgrave gets it done here. We talk about the young tight ends. I think this is the week that we see a lot of these young tight ends kind of make a splash, especially with their high usage. Musgrave went 85% route participation rate. So he is in that offense. So plus 330 is just way too high for me.
I think the other thing too is with how good the Falcons play on the outside, especially with AJ Terrell, Romeo Doubs, and those outside receivers. I'm not sure they're going to have as much success this time around like they did in week 1 against Chicago. So you want to try to attack the Falcons over the middle, and that's where Luke Musgrave is going to be. So great way to end us off here. Now let's talk about the anytime touchdown boosted parlay from Bet365. That's right. The boost is loose, and we're going to be looking at Ja'Marr Chase and David Montgomery. That is the parlay today. We were able to boost it from plus 290 to plus 340, courtesy of Bet365. Now, Chase, I mean, he's played the Ravens 5 times in his career. He's scored in 3 of those games, and he's had 10 plus targets in every game. And David Montgomery, he got the second most carries in the NFL in week 1. He is going to be a workhorse for this Detroit Lions team. Charlie, what are you thinking of the boost? Do you think this is a solid one for us in week 2?
Yeah, I love the boost here. Ja'Marr, obviously a quiet week 1, but he's, Joe Burrow's favorite target. He's going to get a ton of looks, especially inside the red zone. And David Montgomery, I was on him last week on Thursday Night Football. I love him here again too. I know B-Matt was all over David Montgomery this week as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love both of them. Look, I look at Ja'Marr Chase and give me one of the best receivers in the NFL coming off an embarrassing game. After which, he called out the Browns and said they're elves, and then goes up, doesn't do too well. The offense looks horrible. So I absolutely love this spot for Ja'Marr Chase. The guy is going to come out angry. He's going to come out pissed. He's going to come out, and Joe Burrow is going to feed him the ball. This is the way I see it going. Absolutely love Ja'Marr Chase. And David Montgomery, almost had him as my first pick, but I like that we slid him here in the boost. So, boys, I already hit the boost on Bet365. I love it, and I think it's hitting.
Beautiful. And we also talked with Dr. Nick Giffen as well. He had projected fair odds for this parlay at plus 290. So the fact that we're getting a boost up to plus 340, nice little extra juice in our back pocket. And I want to remind everybody, the Touchdown Show is brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. See for yourself when you sign up today with code ACTION, and you'll get $365 in bonus bets when you bet just $1. 21 plus only, must be present in Colorado, Iowa, New Jersey, Ohio, and Virginia. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, New Jersey, Ohio, or Virginia. Or if you're in Iowa, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. Terms and conditions apply. All right, gentlemen, that's all for today. 3 picks from me. We got 3 picks from Charlie. We got 3 picks from Brian. We've got the best boost. The bet boost. I actually have 4 picks if you really want to combine it with the touchdowns for the defensive side of things. So we're going to see everybody next Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern as part of the Action Network Power Hour. And if you missed Convince Me, you can rewatch the show or download the Action Network app, and you can get all of our picks in one place. And you can also check out all of our Week 2 touchdown bets in the Action app. I want to thank everybody for watching the Touchdown Show presented by Bet365. Bon chance.